Hey everybody, I'm Jarrett Perdue, and this is Welcome to Me. Jarrett Perdue is everything from courageous to careful and just very complex. You know, there are things about myself that I do boldly and with all the confidence in the world. And then there are situations in my life where I second guess myself and my ability and what I'm able to do. So it's complex. I'm very loving, and then at the same time I have to fight the urge to hold a grudge. So when you ask who is Jarrett Perdue, I think the best definition is a complex individual. And I'm learning to be all right with that. Man, I mean, I had a wonderful upbringing. I think I'm sure most children would say this, but I probably have two of the best parents a child could ask for. My mother and father were very, and still are, very instrumental in my upbringing. And I had a loving home. I had a comical home. I had a very organized home and upbringing, and all of those things I believe helped develop and cultivate me into what I would become and who I would become in the future. I mean, my mother, she laid it down. She laid the law down, and she didn't play like most mothers. Just didn't play. It is what it is with her. With my father, man, my father is probably one of the most compassionate men you would ever meet. And I can count on one hand how many times my father would discipline my sister and I, because my father was the comical one. It's not that he didn't give discipline, he just disciplined in another way other than my mother, the way she did. So it was just great growing up, a very balanced household. Like I said, mom was probably more strict than my father, but man, I couldn't ask for a better upbringing. My mother and father didn't accept anything less than excellence. I would watch my father studying growing up, and years later, how that impacted my life with what I do. My mother and not accepting anything less than excellence when we do anything. My mother made us practice perfectly. So whenever we were practicing for something, my mother would make us do it as if we were performing it at that moment. So, I mean, that upbringing definitely has impacted my life in the church and the other things in my life that I did growing up, sports, all of those things in Joliet were very impactful. My family at large, just very gifted, talented family. So I can pick out different sections of my life and find out how it has impacted me now, 20, 30 plus years later. Let's see, 17-year-old Jarrett Perdue would be affectionately known as JP. So JP would probably be wearing Karl Kani shorts that go beyond the knees, a Karl Kani shirt, and some Jordans, whatever the latest Jordans were. 17-year-old JP was working at Montgomery Ward. I don't even think Montgomery Ward is open now, but I was working there in the shoe and clothing department. 17-year-old JP wanted nothing more than just to have enough money to make sure he could buy whatever the latest fashion was, be it shoes and clothing and a haircut. Gotta make sure I'm fly on the hair, 17-year-old JP. So, that person was an interesting individual, still very much interested in sports, still really engaged in the church. But what I would tell that 17-year-old JP, if I ran into him today, is I would tell him to be more focused. And I would tell 17-year-old JP, take some of that Karl Kani money and the money you spending on Jordans and start saving that. I would tell 17-year-old JP, he don't have to get his hair cut every week. It'll be okay. I would tell 17-year-old JP be a little bit more focused in school. And I would tell 17-year-old JP to be all right with who he is, with his abilities as well as inadequacies. I would tell him to get comfortable with that and be okay with that. Grow where you can and accept what you can't change. Man, one of the cuts we had, man, first of all, the name of the group was MOP, was the acronym, stood for Men of Pentecost. And my cousin Dion and myself, man, we started this group. And he's actually pastoring now a very successful church in Joliet. And so we started this group, man, as teenagers, he and I. And he's a musician and a songwriter. And of course, I'm a songwriter as well. And so that's how we started, man. Just started writing gospel songs and ended up recording in the studio. Had a couple of our songs played on the radio. And we were just like the Five Heartbeats were when we heard our song on the radio. Running around the house, jumping, trying to call people. We didn't have cell phones back then. But trying to call people on our landline, as y'all call it. We called it a home phone. But trying to call people. Just excited. But man, we had hits like, let me think of some of the songs. One was called Weeping. One was called I'll Stay With You, Lord. Man, we had some jams, man. I missed that. But all of that was intertwined in my upbringing, man. Just a wonderful, wonderful time growing up. So church and what I did in sports, all of that was connected because I played with some of the same people. With my cousins, we played ball together. We were in church together. We went to the mall together. So it was all connected, family as well as church, as well as what we do in our secular lives. We were always together. So there was really never any separation of the two. I'm gonna tell you what, one of the things that really inspires me is a couple things. One, looking at a person's tenacity. So a great story inspires me. I'm always motivated by watching the process. So I'm one of those type of people who, if there's a finished product and it's beautiful, or if it's a finished program and it was outstanding, I'm one of those individuals who I can admire that, but I'm not impressed by it. I'm impressed by the steps that were taken to get to that point. Not only impressed by it, I'm more interested in that. Because I understand that's the guts of it. That's what it takes to have this beautiful finished product. While others may admire and take pictures of the completion of it, man, I'm over here trying to take pictures of the construction sites, of the dirt patches. I want to take pictures of the ladders that are there. I want to take pictures of people being dirty and hands being dirty and clothes being torn. Those are the things that impress me. So what inspires me? Process inspires me. Watching how a person had the tenacity and the ability to continue to go despite the conflicts that they had, the turbulence that may have come along the way, but yet they persevered on. So man, so when I think about people like that, man, I think about people like, we talk about the 90s Bulls. I think about people like Jordan. I think about people like Harriet Tubman. I think about people like, of course, Dr. King. People like my grandmothers. I think about people like my parents. I think about different pastors that have been inspirational down through the years for me. How they have been able to overcome adversity and maintain a level of commitment to the final goal that they were able to go through the process. So I'm inspired by process, man. Show me how you did it, and that motivates me. I don't want to just see the finished product. So what inspires me? Your process. Two of the things that really agitate me, I have quitters, for one. The Lord has to help me with people who quit. Because
what's been your experience?
My experience with it is, again, one of the reasons it frustrates me is because a person who quits resigns from the process. And remember, the process is what inspires me. And so when you quit, I'm like, man, you don't get to enjoy the inspiration of what's going to produce a finished product. You left too early. You stopped too early. You gave up too soon. It's one thing for something not to work, because everything we put our hands to won't work. Some things, man, it's gonna flop. But let it be because it flopped, not because we quit and gave up because it was too hard, or we got frustrated, or man, I don't like you right now. I'm like, man, those things right there, people who quit. The other thing that really frustrates me is people who don't know how to handle personality differences. Man, we have a conflict in personality. And now because of that, we can't accomplish a goal, because I don't like the way you said that to me. Like, that's petty. That's childish. Let's move beyond that. There's a greater goal. And right now, your feelings may not be the primary focus. We may have to deal with that at another time. I may not have said it in a sweet, polite way like you would have wanted me to, but because of the urgency of the moment, maybe I had to be a bit aggressive with my tone. It don't mean I don't like you. It just means that at the moment, this is what we got to get done. But now we got a personality conflict, and now you can't continue to function and do what you need to do so that we can be successful. So quitters and people who don't know how to deal with personality differences, man, I have a huge problem with that. Man, I think the first time I remember doing anything in leadership was I was probably 15 years old. And I was appointed to be the program director for then our church, the church I grew up in, for the young people's department. So it was an appointed position. I wasn't the president, vice president. I didn't sit on the staff. I was the program director. And one of my responsibilities was to put programs together for the youth department, be it a service, an outing, things of that nature. So that was one of the first times I worked in any type of leadership capacity role in the church. But I think the leadership started before then, because ultimately, man, leadership is influence. And there was a level of influence that I began to notice that I had. I didn't try to have it. I wasn't seeking it. You just find out, man, people, it was like this. They would ask, as teenagers, who want to go to the store? And they would ask me, well, do you want to go to the store? And based on what I said, that would determine it. Or, man, where y'all want to go after work? Or where y'all want to go after church? Or where do you want to go after school? And they would look at me to see what I was going to do. And so in those type of situations, you begin to notice that, man, you have a level of influence. Of course, at that age, you don't know it's leadership. At 19 years old, I remember being out of town with a group of friends at one of our conventions. And we're all in a hotel kicking it. And it's probably like 15, 20 of us, because it was the last night, church was over, and we just kicking it. A bunch of us in the room. And I heard God speak to me. And while we all in there laughing and kicking it, having a good time, God spoke to me and said, ask them, what would they do if I came back tonight? Would they be ready if I came back tonight? So we having a good time. Like, it's a great time. I wasn't preaching then. I was 19. I didn't start preaching until I was 21. I was 19. And that's what the Lord said to me. He said, ask them, would they be ready if I came back tonight? And here I am, think about it, in a room where we having a party. We have churched all week long. This is the conclusion. People are packing and hanging out, laughing. And now I ask this question. And it was as if God hit my back and the words came out, because I didn't want to do it. And when I said it, the entire room went silent. And everybody looked at me. And here I am. I'm like, okay, now what do I do now? I don't know what to do with this moment. And the Lord just began to tell me what to say. And I said it. And before you know it, man, we talked, prayed, and praised. No lie. Literally, until the sun came up. The sun came up till the next day. And it may be some that are watching who experienced that in Indianapolis. It was like, this was a God moment. I knew I heard God, and look what happened as a result. But I remember the night my grandmother, Annie Mae, passed away. We were having a church basketball game. We had a church team, and we were playing a team from Indiana. And I mean, man, all of the cousins, we were all having just the greatest game. I mean, everything we threw up was just dropping. And I mean, all of us, all the cousins, we were playing so well. And what we didn't realize is that when I look back on it now, as the clock was ticking down for the basketball, it was also ticking down for my grandmother's life. And we didn't know that, she had been ill, been sick for quite some time. But we're looking at the clock going down and we're about to win this game, not realizing when it gets to 0, man, we're going to get an announcement after the game that we need to rush to the hospital because my grandmother just been taken to the hospital by ambulance. And we rushed to the hospital. This was on a Saturday night. And by the time I got there, it was interesting because she was staying with my uncle. And so I called myself, I'm going to drive to my uncle's house to see her before they take her to the hospital because they said the ambulance is coming to get her. And so as I'm going toward my uncle's house, the ambulance is coming the other way. And I'm like, I think that's my grandmother in there. Hit a U-turn, get to the hospital. And by the time we get there, she had passed. And my oldest, Jade, I was still holding her. I think she was 2 years old. And when they told me that, I lost all the feeling in my leg and I buckled. That moment was very impactful because Sunday was the next day, and that Sunday was also Youth Sunday. I was the vice president of the youth department at this time. So I had gone from being the program director, and now I'm the vice president of the youth department. And I'm scheduled to preach the next day. So we had the basketball game Saturday and then youth service Sunday. So it was just a youth weekend. We were very excited about it. And now I'm at the hospital after having this great victory in basketball with my family and friends. Now we're at the hospital and my grandmother's gone. She's passed on. And now Sunday I'm scheduled to preach. And so, we finally make it home and I'm up reading through the Bible and going over my notes, crying, boo-hooing, toe up, all of that. And people are calling me on the staff and they're like, do you think you're going to be able to do it tomorrow? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know, maybe I should be okay. And I heard my grandmother's voice, and she used to always tell us this. She was so intentional about making sure the gospel of Jesus Christ is preached. She used to say, I don't care if I die. If you are scheduled to preach the gospel. And she used to say that. And, we were kids when she would say that, or young, I should say. And it was like, man, that's how important it was to her. She was like, you preach the gospel of Jesus Christ. And it was actually those words that got me through that moment. I kept hearing her every time I would break down and I'm crying and like I'm not going to be able to do it. I would hear her say, you preach. That's what you're scheduled to do. That's what you're called to do, even more so. It's not just I was scheduled to preach, but I'm called to preach. So that's what we did. And the next day, man, I preached the message, and I'll never forget, the title of it was Will You Return After the Blessing? Dealt with the 10 lepers, and 9 went away, 1 came back to say thank you. And I'll never forget that. But that moment was one of the moments that made me feel like a legitimate leader and preacher, to have the strength and courage to be able to do that. knowing that I'm gonna preach the next day and she's not gonna be in the audience. She's not gonna be in the pulpit. People are gonna be crying. The mood was low, but you're called to lead at this moment. And there's not too much that I can't lead through because of that. That cultivated me for some of life's tragedies that I would face in the years to come. And people sometimes may feel like, you don't have any feelings or emotions. No, it's not that. You have a responsibility and you do what you have to do, So it's not that I didn't cry. I just studied and cried. I prayed and cried. I was reading scriptures and cried. And then when it was time to do what I was called to do, you do it. And after it was over, I went back to crying. So that really right there, it was a defining moment for me as far as leadership is concerned and ministry, that, man, you have the capacity to do it. And with God's help and strength through you, you can do anything. Man, struggle is important because struggle shows that there's a fight. So if there's no struggle, then either you've conquered it or it's conquered you. So if I've conquered it, then of course I have the victory. I'm the champion. But if it's conquered me, then of course I come out the loser. So the struggle shows that there's still a fight. So even in my insecurities and my inadequacies, as long as I struggle with it, it shows that, man, I'm attempting to be better in these areas. If you're struggling in a relationship, it's like, man, the struggle should be in an attempt to be better. I heard one bishop say that if you're a couple and you're arguing, then there's still hope for the relationship. He said it's hopeless when you no longer argue, when there's no longer a struggle, when we're no longer going at each other. But the struggle is still a sense of communication, a sense of hopefulness that I can conquer this, I can overcome this, I can achieve this. So the only time struggle should be removed is when you've conquered it. If it's removed because it conquered you, then you need to go back to struggling. Something that I'm secretly not admitting to myself. Probably that I am concerned with what people think. We live in a society that says, do you, man, it is what it is with other people. And whatever, don't worry about the haters, don't worry about this and that. But man, I am definitely concerned about what other people think to a certain degree. And sometimes I try to act like I'm not at all. But yeah, it does affect me. Not only am I concerned about it, it affects me, especially if what they think of me is negative. And I know that's not who I am. Not having the ability to defend yourself based on what's been said about you that's been in a negative way, that affects me. And although sometimes I try to act like it is what it is, I have to fight those thoughts sometimes, and even the hurt of it. And so, yeah, secretly, I don't always admit that to myself. Some insecurities. Let me see here. That's a difficult thing sometimes because, we don't really like to focus on what we don't do well. But man, maybe some insecurities or that, yeah, maybe some insecurities I have is maybe if I'm doing a presentation or a sermon or whatever, man, will this be effective? Will it be impactful? Did I study enough? Is this just a surface sermon or presentation, or did I really challenge the people to think? And so sometimes there's an insecurity of man, I have a lack of knowledge of the subject at hand, and so I wasn't able to present it in a way to where it was thought-provoking. Sometimes that's an insecurity for me. Sometimes my past becomes an insecurity. Sometimes you wonder, what do people know about you? What do people think they know about you? And how much of what they think they know about you is true? So sometimes what I've gone through becomes an insecurity, as if to say I don't qualify to do certain things. If you've had certain failures, if you've had things that you fell short at, weren't successful at, man, sometimes society, depending on what society that is that you're operating in, may feel like you don't qualify to do certain things. So my past is certainly at times an insecurity that I have to fight with. It's almost like Paul said about the thorn in his flesh. There's always something there buffeting me, reminding me that, hey, don't forget, this happened. Don't forget, you went through that. Don't forget. So yeah, my past has definitely been something that I've fought with. Man, divorce is never easy. It's a difficult task because it's never one person's fault. Man, two people, both parties played some role in it. Now, I will say the percentage is different. So one party may not have as great of a percentage in the failure of it as the other, but both parties do play a role somewhere. If they didn't, then that would almost suggest that the other person was perfect. And if the other person is perfect, then why would a person want a divorce? So we both play a role, and I have a huge responsibility, in the failure of my marriage. It's a huge responsibility. First marriage, number one, being immature. Not understanding the role of a husband. I was a father. I was instantly a husband and a father because prior to that, man, my daughter was born, and I was a stepfather as well. And so all of this was before I got married. And remember too, I grew up in the church, so I got that against me too. So you done had a child before you got married. You're in the church, you know that there's a call of God on your life. And so of course, quite naturally, the church pushes you and says, you need to get married, you need to get married. The people in the church, I should say, not the church, the people in the church, you need to get married. And so I think immaturity, a lack of understanding my role and responsibility as a man, those things play a huge part in a marriage. And man, I have to own that one. I have to take that responsibility. I don't push that blame on anybody else. I don't blame the mother of my children. I don't blame the people in the church. That's my responsibility. That's my fault. And so yeah, I think not learning, not trying hard enough, not seeking counsel as much as I should on my part played a huge role in the dissolution of the marriage. And it's unfortunate because I'm not the only one like that. I'm just one of the few brave enough to say it. But I'm certainly not the only one. There'll be some people watching this and they're going through it right now, married to somebody that they had a situation with, and the people in the church say, y'all need to get married, either because you all had a baby before you got married, or because you've been dating a long time and they don't want nothing to happen. So they're gonna say, go on and marry, because it's better to marry than to burn. But the question is, what happens after you get married and you still burn? So that's something we have to deal with, because marriage don't solve relational issues. Marriage don't solve low self-esteem. Marriage don't solve how to be an appropriate husband and father and leader as a man and a priest of the home. It doesn't solve those things. You have to seek information and be educated in those areas. And so we're quick to get married, but not quick to, prior to marriage, get the information that's necessary to have a successful one. So I have to own it, you know. I believe I played a big part in that, a huge part in that, and it affected a whole lot of lives, and a lot of regret even now over that, and still deal with those things even now. But you have to own it. Jada, who I gave an acronym for her name. I love acronyms. I'm big on acronyms. And so Jada is spelled out Jada. And so Jada stands for Just a Darling Angel. Just a Darling Angel. And immediately when I seen her, man, in that room, 8 pounds, 3 ounces. I think she was 3 ounces or 6 ounces. I'm sure her mother gonna correct me on that. But born August 3rd, man, when I looked at her, man, my life changed. I was like, man, this is somebody I created, and I'm responsible for her. Every part of her being is my responsibility. And it put a weight of responsibility on my shoulders that I felt immediately, and would do all over again. Even though she grown and married now, I would do it all over again, because Jada grew me up. Jada grew me up. Jada made it to where it's like, hey, you can't just quit a job. You know, you would think that just being a young adult would do that, but there's something about having kids that makes you feel like you're living for more than just yourself now. I have a responsibility, and I gotta make it do what it do. And we still say that, you know, make it do. That's one of our slogans, make it do what it do. And so when I met her, changed my life, fell in love with somebody who could do nothing for me at that moment, and who would eventually end up being one of the greatest encouragers and helps of my life. She is who I am socially. Jada has my personality. Jada can walk into a room, and before she leave the room, everybody know her name, you know. So she takes on those characteristics that I have of trying to be the peacemaker, you know, want everybody to be okay and happy and settled. And she also takes on my personality that when she good on you, she good. She good on you. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. I'll let her decide that. But those personalities, and one of those reasons is because she's going to do so much until she gets to that point. And when she hits that point, my sister and I call it 21. My sister and I say, man, everybody has a 21 where they get to that moment, you're like, man, I'm done. I'm done with this, I'm done with that, and I'm moving forward. So she takes on those personalities of who I am socially. The social part of me, Jada has it. The empathetic part of me, I see it in Jada. The compassionate part of me, man, I see it in Jada. The smiling part of me, I see that in Jada. So Jada is really my junior, because I have no biological sons. So Jada is my junior. And so I look at her, and man, we look so much alike. And she actually looks more like my sister. But if Jada was a boy, she'd be my twin. I have so many with Maya, because Maya, being my youngest, although Jada has the personality of who I am socially, Maya takes on my personality as it pertains to intellect. So Maya thinks like me. Maya is strategic like me. Whereas Jada is more of an extrovert, Maya is more of an introvert. So Jada walks in the room, and when she leaves the room, everybody knows her name. Maya walks into the room, and when she leaves the room, people didn't know she was there. because she's studying people in the room. She's studying the environment. So that part of me, of the way I think, she thinks that way. Putting a plan together, she thinks that way. Coming to a resolve. She don't necessarily always have her emotions in it. So she's more of a logical thinker. Whereas Jada may be led emotionally, not emotionally driven. She just may have a heart towards certain things and a little bit more compassionate. Maya is like, this is what it is, this is what we have, and now what are we gonna do with what remains? And that's me. That's me. I have both of those, but she thinks like me strategically. And with that, one of the memories I have of her is one year, I think it was her 8th grade year. She was in orchestra, she was in basketball, she was in the Black Student Union, and I think she was in something else, another sport that they were doing part-time, powder puffs or something I think she was doing. They were playing after school, preparing for a game, because that wasn't a very long season. She was in all these things, and when her report card came out, man, she had like 2 Fs. And before I could say anything, Maya came to me with her plan. So I couldn't even say anything as far as what she needed to do. Maya came to me with her plan, showed me a report card. Dad, this is what it is. I got 2 Fs. This is what I've done over the course of this last quarter. So this is what I'm gonna do. I'm not gonna get no basketball scholarship. So I'm not gonna be on the basketball team. Plus, I don't play that much anyway. I only play most of the time when we up. I don't get a lot of PT. I'm okay at it, but I ain't great. So I'm gonna let that up. She changed her schedule with some other things that she was doing, and focused on what she needed to do to get those grades up. So she had 2 Fs that quarter and made the changes, made the adjustments, dealt with it. Yes, I got the Fs. I'm not excusing them. I messed up. Here's my plan moving forward. She did it. And that next quarter, she was on the honor roll. And I'm like, man, that is so me. You realize the mistakes you've made, you deal with it, make the necessary adjustments, and now let's move forward. Do the process, because working the process is going to give me the goal that I'm aiming for. I don't want to say it bothers me, but something that still amazes me about God is his long suffering for man. You know, I see how quick we're good on people as humans. You don't have to do much for me to unfriend you on Facebook. Just say a couple negative things on Facebook in the comment section, and I'll unfriend you. You know, or put up enough posts that I think that are negative, and I'll unfriend you. But I'm always amazed by the long suffering that God has for us, to where, man, he doesn't immediately throw us away. He doesn't have this immediate judgment toward us. His love is illumined in our lives. His mercy is extended in our lives. And so I'm amazed by the ability that God has to put up with some people who are so impatient with people who are just as imperfect as them. Well, I mean, with your analogy about the car, one of the problems is that's not the first time for a lot of people that they've had an experience at purchasing a car at a good deal. And so sometimes the misconception comes because of prior experiences that we've had. And they're legit. They're legit experiences that I've had in my past that were not good. And so now here you come. Well, the last car dealer told me how great this car deal was going to be. And it turned out to be a lemon. And the one before that told me how great it was going to be. And what happened? It jacked up my credit, and I'm still paying for that car today. And so now here you come telling me how great this deal is. And because my prior experiences have not been the best, I'm not too ready to jump into this deal that you say is the best thing since sliced bread. And I think that's what happens a lot of times as pertains to God, our perception of God, a relationship with God. And as it pertains to religion. Sometimes we've had so many bad experiences and bad representatives of people. In the scripture, the Bible talks about a man by the name of Zacchaeus. I'm sorry, was it Zacchaeus? Yeah, Zacchaeus, I believe it is. Short man in the Bible. And he was trying to see Jesus. And the Bible says because he was short, he couldn't see Jesus the right way. It says because of the press that was around Jesus. Now that word press in Greek, it means the class of people around Jesus. And so he couldn't see Jesus properly because of the class of people that was around Jesus. And sometimes one of my frustrations is that I wish people would get their class out the way so that we could get a better view of who Jesus really is. And that's why sometimes people don't want a relationship with God. It's like, no, if that's what having God is, I don't want it, because of people who say they represent him. So a frustration sometimes is bad representation. Sometimes another frustration is we try to make people put their view of God into our box of who we say God is. Man, he transcends all of those things. God transcends organizations. He transcends the name of your church. He transcends what auxiliary or department you work on. He's bigger than all of those things. He's greater than all of those things. And sometimes who we struggle to love, God has the capacity to do it. And so a lot of times what people do is this. I look at you and I say, because I don't like these things in your life, because I struggle with whatever these issues are in your life, God feels the exact same way I feel about it. Well, God has a greater capacity to love. Not only does God love, but the Bible says God is love. That's who he is. The essence of who he is love. And so it's difficult to comprehend the magnitude of love that he has for all of us. And when we express that to people, sometimes we express that from a limited perspective of how we love. And so now I put the way God loved into the box of how I love. So now all of a sudden, God likes what I like and dislikes what I dislike. He likes who I like and he dislikes who I dislike. So you ever hear people say, okay, keep on messing with me, God gonna get you. Well, everybody needs the love of God. The offended and the offender both need it. The victim and the villain. Everybody needs the love of God in their life, and God has the capacity to do that. So I get frustrated sometimes when we act like God loves like we do, when the reality is we need to love like he does. Man, I believe faith is what brings us hope. It's the substructure of things hoped for. Faith is my foundation that gives me an expectation that things are going to get better than what they are right now. Faith gives me the drive, the desire, the tenacity to go forward, to wake up tomorrow, to try again. Faith says it will get better. Faith says this is not the end. Faith is not a denial of reality, though, and I think sometimes the reason why some people struggle with faith is because we try to act like faith is having no problems, no issues, and that's not it. Faith is not getting your desired outcome. Faith is saying, I believe God, even when the outcome is not to my desire. So it's not just faith when I get what I believe for. It's also, man, I believe God even when I didn't get it. I trust him even when it didn't happen the way I thought it should. I trust him even when the person dies that I was praying for healing. I trust him when I don't get the job that I believed with all my heart I was gonna get. I love God and believe God even when my children don't respond to me in a way that I think children should towards a parent who has sacrificed their life for them. Faith is saying, Lord, I still believe you. So it's not a desired outcome. It's beyond that. Even when I don't get what I want, I still trust God. And that says I still have hope beyond this moment. That's what faith really does. It does not limit me to the moment. It's necessary to have faith because faith, in essence, speaks to a future. Without it, I can't even please God. According to the scriptures, I don't even please God, and I want to please God. And so I got to have faith in order to do that. And faith says there's hope beyond this moment. Prior experiences play a major role in people's participation in church today. And if that was a bad experience, then I either don't want anything to do with it, or I feel like things have to be perfect before I go. Now, how is it we say, come to the church, come to the house of God, and when you get here, man, the church can help you in areas of your life, but you got to come perfect. It's an oxymoron. We're going to help you, but you got to come perfect. Well, if they're perfect already, they don't need to be helped. So one of the things at the church that I pastor, Gathering Place Worship Assembly, GPWA, one of the things that we push is it's the perfect place. The church is the perfect place for imperfect people so God can perfect us. So you don't have to come in perfect. You don't have to come in knowing the colloquialism of the culture. You don't have to come in knowing the rules and regulations. You come in like you are because this is the perfect place for the imperfect. And I push that. So, I understand churches have dress code. Some churches have a particular dress code. And man, I think each ministry should do what they feel the vision of that house is. The problem I have is when one church tries to dictate how every other church should run and operate as if they're the standard. So if this church says men need to wear suits and women need to wear dresses, and they try to dictate and say that's how all churches should be, I have a problem with that. Just like I have a problem with churches who say you don't have to dress up and that's how all churches should be. No, I think you should do what God has called you to do, what your purpose is for the kingdom, for this time, for this era, for this moment, and go with it. So in the ministry and at our church, dress code is not that big of a deal as pertains to people needing to wear suits, women having to wear dresses, and all of that. I don't criticize it because sometimes I do wear a suit, sometimes I don't. We just don't put a lot of pressure on it. On people to have to dress a certain way. This is what I want you to do. What's appropriate for society? And if it's socially appropriate, then come to church in it. If it's not socially appropriate, then don't wear it to church. All right. So if you got on some booty shorts, is that socially appropriate? Is that socially appropriate for where you're going in society? And you're not on the beach and things of that nature. So no. So then you may not want to wear that to church as well. But if you do, you can come on in because God changes the heart. I don't know the heart of that person. That could be all that they have to wear. I don't know. That could be them covering up. They could wear a bikini and they say, I'm going to put on these shorts because that's all I have. So I don't want to criticize them. I don't want to put them out and say, you can't come up in here, go have all the brothers looking. No. Man, we're going to surround her with some wonderful sisters and find out, is there a need that we can help with? And instead of criticizing her for what she's wearing. She's coming for help. She's in need of something. She has a need. She has a desire. There's a longing for something. And we don't want to discourage that because we have given her a negative perspective of her clothing and have limited her spirituality based on what she's wearing. And legacy is what we live for. Everybody wants to be remembered or should want to be remembered. Honestly, when I die, I want my absence to be felt. And the only way that happens is if while you were living, your presence was felt. And so I want my absence to be felt in a way to where people know I'm no longer here, but the legacy and the impact of that legacy is so powerful that what I left remains. The ideas, the creativity, the way I would process, or the way I would organize, the vision. I would hope that when I'm long gone, people will still benefit from that. I don't think we were successful leaders, or we are successful leaders, if we don't leave anything for people to take to the next level. If it dies with you, then you didn't do a good job. It needs to live beyond you. It needs to live beyond your term as a director, as a president, as a pastor. It has to live beyond you in order for it to be legacy. So ultimately, at the end of the day, I want my presence to be missed when I'm gone, but only because my presence was felt while I was here. So I'm excited about this season in my life. I am embracing getting older. I have accomplished in my organization, the organization I'm a part of, I've accomplished the heights of youth ministry, and with being an international president, and I'm enjoying now this next phase of life that's beyond just youth departments. I have a wonderful marriage. It'll be 6 years in November. Married to a beautiful woman who has been a tremendous blessing in my life. Has lifted me, has motivated me, stretched me, and man, we have a great time together. We laugh a lot, and I think that's part of the key of remaining youthful even as we grow older, is we enjoy life a lot together. And so I'm learning to do that, to take some time to enjoy things outside of church, some things that is not connected to a service or a church event. And she has definitely helped me to do that with enjoying life, a walk in the park, vacation, things of that nature. But the church is going well. There's some new ideas that's coming up, some creative thoughts from the members. So life is good. My children are grown. I have adult children now, so I'm just about an empty nester. Got one in college. And so, man, the second phase of my life, the 40 plus, is going to be greater than the first 40. I'm gonna do more in the next 40 than I did in the first 40. I'm gonna be even more impactful, more influential. I'm gonna be a greater encourager. I'm gonna be more exciting, more energetic, because this next phase is gonna have a greater demand on my life, and I'm ready for it. I'm here for all of it.